What trends are you seeing here? How is it different from Silicon Valley?
You know, I think it's amazing. We have, two of the richest men in the world here that founded amazing companies with Bezos and Bill Gates. And the startup scene continues to evolve here. I think it's always been strong. But when you go around Seattle, you just see the amazing number of new companies that have come up. And I met with 3 companies this morning and probably could fill 3 days with companies back to back that are high quality.
You invest across a range of sectors, fintech especially.
Exactly.
What's your take on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency?
I think it's early. I think Bitcoin as a currency is more in the sort of the gambling category is where I would put it. And
what about a fraud? Because that's what Jamie Dimon says.
I think there are the bad actor cases of Bitcoin and in terms of just out and out fraud. I think ICOs, when you get into the ICO market, there are some use cases that I think can make a ton of sense. And so when you look at ICOs, probably the thing that has made the most sense to me, which is not really what we're seeing it used for too much, is instead of debt financing, right? So an example is a company in South Africa that was doing solar panels and sold each individual solar cell, and then the annuity on that income from the individual solar cell was the sort of the currency, in other words, right? So instead of having to have a big CapEx outlay up front, you could see it for companies of that nature. So I think that's really exciting, actually.
So when it comes to areas to invest in, what do you think is hot? Like, what's of interest to you and what's not?
What's hot and what's not. So what's hot, I think fintech is always hot. Fintech, there's a $1 billion fintech company plus in every single cycle. I think fintech continues to reinvent the entire banking system, and I think we're moving more into real estate. I just did Roofstock is an investment that we're really excited about. So I think fintech will just continue to be hot in different sectors. I think what's cooled is more of the lending space in fintech.
Well, you did invest in LendingClub early on. They went public in 2014. They've had some issues. They've got a new CEO. What do you think about the risks associated with this and the scandal?
No, I think with LendingClub, it was a CEO transition, right? And so Scott Sanborn stepped up. He was an amazing CMO for that company and has done a really great job leading that company through that executive transition. And so I think in that case, it was just a case of a management transition, not a fundamental case in the business model itself.
So there's been a rash of sexual harassment stories in tech, women at tech companies, in VC among venture capitalists. What's it going to take to change?
Yeah, and I get asked this, and I can tell you personally, I haven't been sexually harassed, which it's kind of funny in a way because I get asked this all the time. But I think it's setting the right example, to be honest, more from the men than the women. So I think it just has to not be tolerated, and I think we're seeing that. I think what we're seing these days is really people stepping up and saying, hey, this isn't okay. And I think that's what it's going to take.
Sexual harassment is one thing, but what about discrimination? Have you faced that?
I've been lucky. I haven't. I've always been in a male-dominated industry. When I was an engineer, I was the only female in the classroom often, and I feel like, for me at least, it's actually more often than not worked in my favor. But it's not that I haven't seen it. And so I think for that, again, it's people saying something about it. When they see it, you say something about it, and you don't let it go. And I think that's how you can change it.
When the James Damore Google engineer memo came out, in which he said that he thinks there are biological reasons for the lack of women in engineering and in leadership, you said to the New York Times, there's a high awareness right now, which is positive, but at the same time there's a fear. Many men feel now like they have a gun to their head.
Well, and
but I wonder, is the fear, is that what it's going to take?
I hope not. I mean, I would say that the huge majority of men that I've worked with in my career, when they heard about these things coming out, they themselves were mortified, right, that this was happening. And so what I worry about are people going too extreme to where they're afraid of taking meetings with women, right? And these are or they're afraid of, inviting women out to dinner for a business meeting, or all very normal things guys would do together, right? And I worry about that because I feel like that will set us back even further. So I think there's a sort of an awareness and a level of it, just not accepting it, that needs to happen.
Okay, so if they should be taking these meetings, doing these dinners, how do you make sure these things don't happen?
In terms of just...
How do you make sure nothing crosses a line? How do you make sure that women are included?
Yeah, I think you be inclusive. I think you ask yourself, would everyone feel comfortable that's on the team if we're having this dinner, we're going to this event? And I often do that myself, right? In terms of my entire team, would everyone want to go and do this event or this activity? And sometimes you have to make sacrifices that are better, for the overall group. And then I think a lot of it is just a judgment call. I will tell you. I mean, the guys that you see sort of that are accused of these issues and doing these things, it's not like a one-off kind of thing, right? It's sort of a repeat occurrence. And I would say it's not endemic in the industry. It really are there specific kind of bad actors that hadn't been called out before and that are now.